Sometimes the deep dive topics you send us are, well, let's just say they can be pretty unexpected.
Huh, yeah. Welcome back to Sip and Talk. I'm Joe. This one definitely falls into that category.
So sure. It starts with something that seems almost, I don't know, kind of silly, but it actually opens up some really, really interesting stuff about, like, culture, the internet, censorship.
It really does.
Mm-hmm.
When we got the sources, the basic idea connecting this beloved kid's character to a world leader, it almost felt like a meme itself.
Right.
But digging into the material you sent, the story is way more complex and honestly pretty revealing.
Absolutely. So that's our mission for this deep dive. Based on the sources you shared, the articles, the notes, we want to understand the surprising link between, the honey-loving bear we all know.
Winnie the Pooh.
Winnie the Pooh and a certain prominent world leader. But more than just the link, explore what it tells us about how images work, how information flows, especially when, censorship is part of the picture.
Exactly. We'll look at the timeline, like who came first, then how a visual joke kind of spiraled into a political thing.
Right.
And then maybe zoom out a bit, see how this specific case might show us bigger patterns, like how originals and things that look like originals sometimes compete or maybe don't compete in certain systems.
Okay, sounds like a plan. So let's jump right in. Setting the scene first. This whole comparison, it wasn't planned or anything, right? The sources are clear on that.
Totally accidental.
Hey.
Which brings us to that first basic question the sources answer. Who was actually around first?
Crucial starting point.
Super crucial. And the material is crystal clear. Winnie the Pooh, created by A.A. Milne. Over in the UK, he first showed up way back in 1924.
1924. Wow, okay, so almost 100 years ago.
Pretty much. And the sources also tell us Xi Jinping was born in China in 1953.
1953. Okay, so doing the math, that's nearly a 30-year gap.
Exactly. So chronologically, there's no contest. Pooh is the senior figure here, definitely.
Yeah, he's practically like the grandfatherly figure in this comparison.
You could almost see it that way, yeah. Someone born later might have even grown up with Pooh stories.
Which makes it completely impossible for Pooh to have been created as some kind of look-alike. So how on earth did this comparison even start?
Well, that's where the internet comes in, right?
Of course.
The sources explain it really began pretty innocently, just visual humor. Among internet users, netizens starting around 2013 maybe.
Yeah.
People just noticing, a resemblance.
Yeah, it was that whole era of finding accidental lookalikes and turning them into memes.
Totally. And the sources have some pretty classic examples. Like in 2013, there was that photo of Xi Jinping walking with President Obama at the time.
Oh, I remember that one.
Yeah. And people online immediately put it next to pictures of Pooh walking with Tigger.
It fits surprisingly well, visually.
It did. Then 2014, another one. Xi Jinping shaking hands with Shinzo Abe, the Prime Minister of Japan.
And who did Pooh meet that time?
Pooh and Eeyore.
Oh, Eeyore, okay.
And then the one that the sources really highlight, maybe the most famous one, from 2015, it's Xi Jinping standing up in, like, a parade review vehicle.
And the comparison.
A picture of Pooh sitting happily in a little toy car.
Ha! Okay. And the sources called that one, what was it?
China's most censored photo. That specific comparison.
Wow, okay. So clearly this all started just as internet jokes, right? Observational humor, not malicious initially.
Seems that way, just based on visual similarities. One source kind of puts it in Pooh's voice like, hey, I'm just a chubby bear. I'm not trying to start a revolution.
Right. Leave me and my honey out of this. But, okay, this is where the story takes a turn, doesn't it? The deep dive gets more serious here. That humor somehow became a real political problem.
It really did. The sources point to maybe 2017 as a turning point. That's when mentioning Winnie the Pooh started getting really, really sensitive on the Chinese internet.
Sensitive how? Like what actually happened?
Well, the examples in the sources are pretty stark. Trying to type Winnie the Pooh into a search bar or post it on Weibo, the big social media platform.
Yeah.
You might just get a message back saying the content is illegal. Just blocked.
Just for the name. Wow.
Yeah. And then there was the Disney movie, the live action one, Christopher Robin, came out in 2018, banned in China, couldn't be shown. And the Chinese title was apparently something like Close Friend Pooh.
So even a mainstream movie featuring the character got blocked.
Completely blocked. And the sources also mentioned this video game, Devotion, back in 2019.
Okay.
It got pulled from stores in China, blocked online, partly because players found like an Easter egg, a hidden symbol inside the game that referenced the whole Xi Jinping Winnie the Pooh comparison.
Just that little reference was enough.
Apparently so. It caused a huge backlash.
Man, the sources use this really stroking phrase for this, like an analogy.
Oh, yeah, the look-alike punishment.
That's it. Explain that.
Well, the source puts it kind of like this. In some countries, you get locked up for doing something wrong. In China, you might get blocked just for looking like the state leader.
Oof.
And they joke it's a punishment so severe that even Apple's Face ID wouldn't dare recognize it.
Look-alike punishment. That really captures it.
Mm-hmm.
So the implication from the sources is, why? Why did this happen? It's because the comparison, even if it started funny, was seen as, what? Mocking the leader.
Yeah, undermining the dignity or the image of the leader. That seems to be the core issue identified in the materials. That image is highly protected, extremely sensitive in that context.
So this harmless bear, through no fault of his own, accidentally becomes this, like, symbol of dissent.
A symbol of resistance, as one source puts it.
Yeah.
It just shows how much power an image, even an accidental one, can take on in a tightly controlled information space.
Which, okay, this leads us into that bigger point the sources were making. They use Pooh as kind of a case study, right, for this larger pattern they see in China. About how things that look like or reference originals, the term they use is shanzai. Did I say that right?
Yeah, shanzai, often translated as like parody, knockoff, look-alike products or concepts.
Right. How those things can sometimes actually become bigger or even push out the original thing they resemble.
This is a fascinating paradox they explore. They literally ask, why does this parody or look-alike thing seem to win so often in that specific system?
Okay. And they offer reasons.
They do. Several key reasons, all tied to what they call China's unique national conditions.
All right, let's break those down because understanding this environment seems key to understanding the Pooh situation too. What's the first reason?
The first one they discuss is basically about market rules, or maybe market philosophy. It's summed up as grab the market first, worry about patents later.
Okay, so speed over perfection. Or speed over permissions.
Kinda, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They contrast it with what they see as the typical Western approach. You do your research, you get your patents, you get approvals, then you launch.
Slow and steady.
Whereas this other approach, the sources suggest, is more about getting something out there fast, something that looks or feels like something already successful. Establish that foothold.
And deal with the IP stuff later. Or maybe reframe it.
Right, sometimes redefining it as local innovation. The sources give some big examples. They mention TikTok, which obviously exploded globally, but its roots are in the Musical.ly app. They mention Pinduoduo, the huge e-commerce site, borrowing concepts from Amazon or Groupon, but adapting them in a way that just dominated the local market.
And the big tech companies too.
Yeah, the big AT companies, Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent. Their early days, the sources point out, involved drawing heavy inspiration from successful U.S. models like Google, eBay, PayPal, etc.
And the punchline from the sources on all these examples is...
But the problem is, they all won.
Yeah.
They achieved massive success within their ecosystem.
Okay, that's a strong point. What's the next reason?
Economics. Pure and simple economics.
Mm-hmm.
The argument in the sources is that the original product or service is often expensive, slow, and focuses on conscience.
Meaning high R&D, following all the rules?
High costs,
Yeah.
Whereas the parody or the look-alike is positioned as cheap, fast, and just needs to be similar.
Good enough, basically.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
The sources use this kind of rough calculation. If something gives you maybe 70% of the look, 50% of the function, but it only costs 20% of the original's price.
It's a win for a lot of consumers.
Yeah, absolutely. They point to examples like Xiaomi phones versus iPhones early on, or how fast fashion designs seen on Taobao quickly mirror stuff from Zara or Uniqlo.
Or even content, right?
Yeah. They mentioned Douyin, which is the Chinese version of TikTok, how quickly it can replicate trending video formats or even scripts from overseas YouTubers, but maybe make them faster, punchier, more down-to-earth for the local audience.
And the consumer mindset, according to the sources, is just...
Looks like it works similarly. It's cheap, I'll buy it. It's a very practical, powerful market logic.
Makes sense. Okay, reason number 3. This one seems huge.
It is. It's the information blockade.
Yeah.
What people often call the Great Firewall.
Wall, right.
This system literally prevents many original products, original services, original ideas from even entering the Chinese market in the first place.
Yeah, you can't win a race you're not allowed to run.
Exactly. Google, Facebook, YouTube, Wikipedia, all blocked. And the sources make this interesting point. If you, as an original creator outside China, wanted to sue someone inside for copying.
How would you even do that?
You'd basically have to climb the wall just to find a lawyer who could operate in both systems. It's incredibly difficult.
So if the original thing can't even get in or people inside can't easily see it,
then the local version, even if it started as a copy, faces almost no direct competition within that walled garden. It becomes the reality for people inside.
the sources had an analogy for this too, didn't they?
Yeah, it was like someone builds a huge wall, copies everything they find inside it, and then eventually claims the original stuff outside the wall isn't even real because, hey, nobody inside has ever seen it.
Creates its own reality. Wow, okay. And the fourth reason?
This one points to government support. The sources suggest that the definition of independent innovation in China can be, well, flexible. And there's a strong tendency to support domestic companies.
Kind of protectionism.
You could call it that.
Yeah.
Even something that clearly started as imitation, if it's developed further by a Chinese company, it can be hailed and supported as domestic innovation.
And that support means?
Subsidies, maybe easier regulations, market protection, making things deliberately difficult for foreign competitors trying to get in or operate.
So the sources kind of map out a potential life cycle?
Yeah, like a playbook almost.
Yeah.
Original tries to enter China,
Wow.
gets copied fast by a local player. Original gets blocked or hindered.
Uh-huh.
The local parody version takes over the domestic market. Then the government actively helps that local version to maybe even expand globally.
And they had examples for this too.
They mentioned battles like Zoom versus Tencent meeting, Tesla facing strong competition from local EV makers like Atikesh, or Netflix being unavailable while local streaming giants like iQIYI thrive.
Okay. And the summary quote for this whole section was pretty blunt.
It was. In a free market, originals win through patents. In a closed system, parity wins through national conditions.
It really highlights it's just a different set of rules, a fundamentally different playing field.
Completely.
Okay, so let's bring this all back. Connect this big picture analysis from the sources back to Winnie the Pooh.
Right. It fits disturbingly well, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, you have Pooh, the innocent original British creation. Absolutely the original in every sense of the word.
Definitely.
And he gets banned. The original is literally blocked. Meanwhile, the parody, which in this case isn't a product, but the visual association, the meme, the idea of the leader looking like the bear, that parody image exists and circulates within the very system that banned the original bear.
Huh. Yeah. The original is out. The look-alike idea is in.
And the sources are really clear.
Yeah.
This isn't just some quirky, funny story that got out of control. It's actually a perfect, if small, illustration of these much bigger conflicts.
Conflicts between what?
Between, like, top-down political authority trying to control image and the messy bottom-up world of internet humor. Between sophisticated censorship systems and people's creative expression.
And maybe even bigger than that.
On a larger scale, yeah. The sources frame it almost as a tiny skirmish in the global struggle over information freedom. It pits this innocent, bare image against these huge forces, trying to chase reality and control what people see and think.
Wow. That's quite a journey for a bear who, mostly just wanted some honey and to hang out with Piglet.
Seriously. From the quiet 100-acre wood in England to becoming this weird accidental symbol in debates about global internet control, it's pretty wild.
It really is. Okay, so just to recap, using only the sources you sent us for this deep dive, we started with what looked like just a silly internet meme comparing Pooh and Xi Jinping based on looks.
Just appearance and age, yeah.
We saw how that visual joke, pretty innocent at first, somehow morphed into this super sensitive political symbol in China.
Leading to actual censorship, blocking the name, banning the movie.
Right. And then the sources used that specific case, the Pooh story, as a kind of lens, a way to understand this bigger pattern they described.
About how, in that specific system, these local lookalikes or parodies, whether it's products or ideas or even memes, can end up dominating, sometimes even pushing out the originals.
And the reasons for that, according to the sources, are things like those unique market rules, the economic factors, the information blockade, the wall, and explicit government support for domestic version.
It really shows how complex things get when simple images or jokes run up against these powerful systems trying to control the narrative.
It absolutely does. And it kind of leaves you, the listener, with this final thought from the sources to chew on, doesn't it?
Yeah, that question of how.
Yeah.
How can something seemingly so simple, so innocuous like a children's book character or an internet joke get tangled up with these massive systems of control?
and become a symbol for these huge fights over freedom and information and even what we think of as original or real.
What other everyday things, other innocent images or ideas might get caught in the crossfire of these kinds of struggles without us even realizing it?
It's definitely something to think about. A really thought-provoking look at how images and power interact in our world today.
For sure. A good reminder of all the hidden layers beneath the surface online.
Definitely gives you a whole new way to look at internet memes, that's for sure.